And welcome to a special edition of the Double A Team. I'm Ken Fang along with Stephen Nagishi, and we're happy that you're joining us. We were scheduled to go on at 7 o'clock Eastern time, but the things happened. That's okay. We're very happy to be joined by our very special guest, a man who doesn't need any introduction, but we'll introduce him anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Taylor Twellman from Apple TV Plus, formerly of ESPN, of course, played soccer for the US men's soccer team, and one of my a person who we've followed for quite some time, each other on social media. We finally got to talk during an Apple briefing earlier this year, but finally happy to bring him in live. Taylor, thank you for joining us, and I know that LA traffic is tough this time of day, so thank you for joining us.
No problem, buddy. It only took me 55 minutes to go 4.5 miles, Ken. So yeah, LA traffic's great this time of year.
Oh, absolutely. And knowing you, I know that you just decided to drive yourself. So instead of taking an Uber.
I haven't been in Massachusetts for the last 23 years. There's a little mass hole in me, and I need to be in charge of the car.
Oh, I know, absolutely. That Boston and Foxborough and Providence traffic always is fun to deal with. Taylor, of course, you're in LA for the MLS Cup final, and you're going to be calling that along with Jake Ziven for Apple TV Plus. Of course, people who don't have Apple TV Plus, why you should have Apple TV Plus. I'll ask about the Apple discount certainly a little bit later on. But Taylor, first of all, you'll be calling that along with Jake Ziven. It's going to be the LA Galaxy, kind of a home game for them, and the New York Red Bulls. Talk about the MLS Cup and how that's going to be, and preview that a little bit for us.
It's interesting, Ken, because 10 years ago, I was in this building and they won their 5th MLS Cup. And if you would have told me that day, broadcasting for ESPN, that it would be 10 years to the day exactly that the LA Galaxy would be playing in their next MLS Cup in that building, I'm not sure I would have believed you. So it's been a little bit of a rut for the winningest team in MLS history. I think they've had a little bit of a struggle in market because LAFC have come in here and kind of blown the doors off of it with their stadium and their fan base and the style of play. But the Galaxy are back. Make no mistake about it. The way they've gone about their business on the field, the way they're doing it off the field now, there's a different energy around the Galaxy, and so they'll be hosting, trying to win their 6th one. They'll be playing in their 10th MLS Cup, which is remarkable to think they've done that in 29 years. And you look at the New York Red Bulls, it's the lowest seed ever to make the MLS Cup final. It's amazing. However, I think it needs to be said that their best player, their highest paid player, Emil Forsberg, the Swedish national team player, if he was healthy for 75, 80% of the games, they would not have been the lowest seed ever to make MLS Cup. They would have finished in the top 3 or 4 in the Eastern Conference, and they would have had a little bit more pressure on them to do something. But you've got the LA Galaxy, the New York Yankees, the LA Dodgers, if you will, that kind of brand, the Lakers and whatnot. And you've got the little bit of an underdog with the New York Red Bulls only playing in their 2nd MLS Cup final ever in 29 years. So you've got both contrasts going on in the final on Saturday.
Also, LA Galaxy is going out with one of the more dynamic players, Ricky Puig, who is one of the, if you've ever seen those games with LAFC, how dynamic he has been. Talk about the fact that the Galaxy is going to be without him for this game.
That's a difficult one, my man. Ricky Puig to tear his ACL with 25 minutes plus left in the game. He still provides the game-winning assist, which is remarkable. But you've got a real pit in your stomach. You feel for him. He's the best 11 midfielder. He's the heartbeat of this team. Last year, through their struggles, when they really struggled to do anything, Ricky just made it known that he came to LA to win something, that the Galaxy are the brand around the world that everyone knows about, and he wants to do something coming over from Barcelona. So you feel for him. It's also got to be said, he's going to be missing 6 months of next season as well. So this is a huge loss. Now, in saying that, though, Ken, they played 5 games this year without Ricky Puig. They won 3 of them. They drew 1. They only lost 1. In the one they lost, they started Marco Reus, the German Bundesliga player of the year, the German great. He's iffy. No one really knows if he's going to be healthy to play in this MLS Cup. So I expect them to play Diego Fagundes. And when Diego's played, they won all 3 of those games in that position. So it's a huge miss without Ricky Puig. But the Galaxy are well more diverse than just their number 10 with Paintseal and Peck. They spent $20 million to bring in those 2 players, and those 2 players have delivered. They're the first team in MLS history, Ken, to have 4 players score 10-plus goals. They're the first team in MLS history to have 3 players score 10-plus goals and have 10-plus assists. So they're very dynamic and diverse in their attack. Ricky Puig is going to be missed. I don't know if it's going to be as big of a miss as people think, just because I think they're a really good team.
Steven?
So as somebody who has been doing the Apple TV for quite some time now, you left ESPN, which isn't unheard of. You know, you had a lot of people join ESPN and leave ESPN at some point. When you left ESPN, was this a part of you felt, okay, I've accomplished enough at ESPN, I want to leave and do more soccer stuff? Or was this a part of you, you know, with the unfortunate cuts and all that kind of stuff that usually gets, make the news nowadays in the media?
It's a good question, Stephen. It is. Listen, ESPN made me a great offer. The problem is with ESPN is they lost Major League Soccer. They lost the U.S. men's national team. They lost the Euros. They had lost the World Cup. And so their offer, and I love ESPN. We'll always love ESPN. And to be honest with you, I would be shocked if I don't end up back there at some point in my career.
Right.
But my passion, my love, I didn't want to give up soccer. And so to host sports centers and to do the other things that I was doing, which I loved and I missed dearly, to stare in that mirror and look at myself and see my family and say, I'm really going to give up soccer and what is my passion? No, Major League Soccer is a massive passion of mine. It is something I believe in. It's something I played in. It's now something that I've covered for 14 plus years. And so it was a hard decision emotionally, but practically it was the right decision. I want to chase my dreams with Major League Soccer. I wanted to see where Apple TV is going to take this, and I'm quite pleased with where it's been in the first 2 years. So it's a good question, Stephen. I don't think I ever saw myself leaving ESPN, but here we are, and I think it was the right move at the time.
Yeah, and
go ahead, Ken. Sorry about that.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Stephen. Go ahead.
You are well known for that famous or infamous rant right after the U.S. missed out on the the World Cup in Russia. How much do you still, get stopped by from people about that? And was that kind of a pre-planned, or was it just something just kind of spurred out of the moment because you were so upset with the U.S. missing out on that?
Stephen, if you had 10 minutes with me over a beer, coffee, or whatever, you would know that was spur of the moment. The best accomplishment of my professional career is the fact that in that rant, I did not curse once. It is amazing.
I was surprised.
I was
surprised about that. Yeah.
Because anyone that knows me knows there is zero chance there wasn't a good profanity late it was there. It was at the tip of the tongue and it never came out like it is right now. I could give you 3 or 4 words that I wanted to say. That was not premeditated. That was as genuine as it gets, for better or worse. And to answer your question, I was getting my bag off the plane today in LA and someone walked right by me and said, "What are we doing?" It happens. It is what it is. I think it's a compliment, but then again, who knows?
Do you like being a meme?
Ken, honestly, it's a great meme. My favorite part truly is, Scott Van Pelt's a real good friend of mine, but more importantly, just someone I've always just idolized and admired. When he pushes that button on his show and it's "What are we doing?" it just makes it feel that much better. It just does.
Absolutely. One of the things about MLS this season, of course, we had Messi, and of course,
Yeah.
Apple TV went hard on it, and they even had one of his matches on the big screen, which I have been. When I was with Apple at this Apple store in Providence Place, I said we need to be showing these games. We just can't have them on a TV on the side. We need to have it on the big screen to market this. And I know the MLS Cup is going to be on the big screen in Times Square this Saturday, which is going to be a big thing. But how with the fact that even though Messi is not in this final, you have LA Galaxy, which I think is a big thing for MLS. You need a big market there, and you have New York there. It's a big market there too. But what did they have? What the fact is that is MLS missing something with Messi not in the final?
I mean, he's the greatest player of all time. So if LeBron James is not in the NBA Finals, obviously you see certain things happen. I will say this. I think it's a positive thing that Messi lost. And the reason why is he's really made it look easy at times. I mean, he's really, at 37 years old, made it look really easy, and it's not. And he's now doing that at 37 in World Cup qualifying in South America. He's just good, and it just is what it is. But it's a reminder to anyone, Atlanta United finished 34 points below them, and they beat them 2 out of 3 games.
Yes.
So it's a compliment to the league, a league that prides itself on parity, prides itself on you can't just outspend everyone else. You've got to be smart in how you do it. You've got to use all the different ways to develop players. So, yeah, that's the positive side, in my opinion. Now, I'm getting into the weeds. Big picture-wise, if Messi's in the final, absolutely. We're talking about a completely different spectacle. However, Apple will tell you this. In the 108, 9, however many countries that Apple TV is going to show MLS Cup in, if you did a survey in each of one of those countries, LA Galaxy's just naturally the one team they bring up. Now, they'll bring up Miami now because of Messi, but LA Galaxy is the one team everyone knows. David Beckham, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Robbie Keane, Landon Donovan. So, Ken, to that point, if you're not going to have Messi in the final, I think the business people of this would say, well, yeah, but you've got the biggest brand team-wise in Major League Soccer's Cup final for the first time in 10 years. So, yeah, would it be amazing if it was LA Galaxy at Inter Miami? Absolutely. No doubt about it. But I only think it's going to make 2025 even a better story because Miami set the record this year for most points. More than likely, Lionel Messi is going to win MVP, but he didn't win MLS Cup. So now it only builds the drama and the momentum. Tata Martino's left due to personal reasons. You follow me, Ken? There's going to be a momentum this offseason that almost makes Inter Miami and Messi even a better watch and a bigger story because if he won in his first year the way he won League's Cup in the first 6 weeks he was here, I don't know if it has the same buzz. I think if he does it next year, it's got a bigger buzz.
Good point. Good point. Steven?
So the MLS playoffs, it does have some detractors. Like you have 2 out of 3 games, which certainly a lot of games to be played in such a condensed schedule wise. You know, you could lose 1 game and then you could play tie for the next 2 games. I believe it was Stephen Fry who complained about that system being so broken and everything. As somebody who's involved with MLS for such a long time, if you were Don Garber, and we will get to Don Garber in a bit down the road.
I know where Stephen. I know where you're going. Honestly, I'm the perfect person to ask this question because I played in the league. We changed the playoffs every single time. And we changed it a lot, right? We did home and aways. We did best of 3. We did first team to 5 points, whatever it may be. I will say this. As a player, just tell me the rules and I'll win the game. Like I like the format is for those of us now in the media and whatnot but as a player, what are the rules? Just tell me what the rules are and I got to win at that game. I was very critical of Jordi Alba complaining about the format. And the reason why is you didn't lose 2 of 3 games to Atlanta because of the format. You lost because you guys couldn't score a goal against Brad Guzan, who was standing on his head, against the team that finished 34 points behind you. You follow where I'm going, Stephen. The other part to this is you've got to reward the regular season. You've got to reward it. And without promotion relegation, which Major League Soccer doesn't have, if you get 2 home games because you finished higher, you should, in theory, beat that team 2 out of 3 times. Now, Stefan Fry was talking about you technically don't have to win a game. You could tie 2 and win 2 in penalty shootouts. And I think that can be tweaked, and I think eventually it will. But this year, Miami is not in the final, and they did lose to Atlanta. It's not because of the format. It's because they were not good against Atlanta, and they should have been. Atlanta was coming in tired. They played 3 games in 7 days, and still Miami couldn't beat them. That's the reason why. But, Steven, I think this thing's going to change. I think eventually when San Diego comes in, and this is the best compliment I can give to Major League Soccer is this. They evolve. They see things and go, we got to tweak this, or we got to fix this, and we got to get through this. There's going to be 30 teams in the league next year. It wouldn't surprise me if they look at things and tweak them the way they have. But in my 8 years with the Revs as a player before concussions ended my career, I played in 4 different formats. And as a player, you just want to know what the rules are. Okay, I got to win the game then. You follow me? I don't think it detracts that much away from the players. And I think if a player's complaining about the format, I think they're distracted then, because the whole point is, what are the rules? I'll play the game. But then again, I was a little different. I'm wired differently. Just tell me what the rules are. I do understand why there's questions, Stephen, to put a bow on this. I wouldn't be surprised if this thing evolves over the next year or 2.
So it could be like brought back to home and away and then eventually settle for.
Yeah, but Stephen, I got to tell you, I'm not. The Champions League has said this too. FIFA's done a study, so has UEFA. The home and away is brutal. Leg ones become really, really boring and really slow. The other thing is too, in a league with no promotion relegation, how are you awarded with home and away? Right. An owner for a team that finishes higher, they get 2 ticket gates if they need it. You see what I'm saying? A home and away, it doesn't matter then if you finish 2nd or 7th, you both get a home playoff game. They've got to weigh that and figure that part out.
We're speaking with Taylor Twellman of Apple TV Plus, of course, the number 1 analyst over the top analyst, the A analyst, along with Jake Zivin. They'll be calling the MLS Cup this weekend, and we look forward to having that on. Of course, there'll be another network that's showing it, but we don't have to mention that other network. And you should be watching.
Hey, Ken, it's completely fine. We'll be on Apple TV on MLS Season Pass on Apple TV, 2:30 p.m. Eastern, and Fox has the game at 4 o'clock. No problem. We got it.
Okay.
It's all good.
Okay, I'm glad you feel that way. But one thing that I'll have to say about the Apple TV experience is, of course, having MLS 360, and you have that whip around format that goes around from game to game to game. You're mostly in the game sites, but times that you're in the studio, how much fun is it to just be able to see like your own different red zone for that sport, for that game, from 7:30 until midnight?
Well, for someone like myself that has ADD when games are on, Ken, I love it. There's 7, 8, 9 games on at the same time, so it keeps me busy. I've enjoyed it. I really have. I think it's a great foundation to build this house of Major League Soccer with Apple TV from. And I think that was a great start. I think there's a way you can evolve that too, where you could have a game of the week and then have 360 and almost kind of own the weekend a little bit more.
Right.
And I think eventually we'll get there, but you got to walk before you run, all those things. But 360 is an awesome time. It's great. The fact that you can watch it on any device while you want to watch your own team's game, it feeds into that. The other part to this, Ken, that I don't think a lot of people know, if you have the Apple TV box, you now have multi-view. You can watch 4 games at the same time.
Yes, I've got it. Yes.
And Ken, that to me, Ken, that's been something for me when I bring it on the road. So I have it in the room. Like it's one of those where you're like, this is good, man. This is really, really good. So it's been a great experience. I've enjoyed it. I kind of wish I could do studio a little bit more, and who knows, maybe that comes down in the future. But I just love the fact that an MLS junkie, anyone that's interested in the league all over the world can watch those games with no blackouts, no time constraints, no delays, and they can experience the exact same thing I'm experiencing in the moment.
The fact that Apple has the global rights to MLS and can show it in any country. So if you're traveling, if you're in Thailand, if you're in Taiwan,
Yep.
if you're in
Yep.
Europe, you get to see those games. You don't have to worry about, as you mentioned, the blackouts. You don't have to worry about that, and that's something that maybe the sports media can look at in the future.
Ken, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's important. The head coach, the manager of the New York Red Bulls is Sandro Schwartz. He's German. And I spoke with him this morning and I asked him how many people. And he said there will be 1,000 or so people watching Apple TV because the game's at 1 o'clock Pacific time. It's 10 o'clock at night in Germany. He said all of his friends are going to watch it and they're going to experience that same thing. They're more than likely going to put me on mute. That's okay. But the point being is that they're going to enjoy the broadcast. They're going to have some fun.
Steven, go ahead.
So obviously the league has grown over the years. I know you mentioned about pro relegation, and obviously there are a lot of non-Americans. You mentioned Sandro Schwartz from Germany, and there's also a lot of players who are used to playing in such formats, whether you're from Europe or South America. I'm wondering, will pro relegation ever catch on in America? And I say this because there's a lot of American owners who are investing a lot of money in European soccer.
But there's also a lot of American owners investing in Major League Soccer, though, Stephen, right? So, I mean, listen, I know what. First off, I appreciate the question. I've always been on the record, and I'll always stay there. I'm a massive fan of promotion relegation, absolutely 100%. But that also doesn't mean. And look at Liga MX right now is looking at it saying, hang on a minute. They've looked at what the American owners are doing in Major League Soccer and saying, wait a minute, there's something to having a structure and a balance and whatnot. Sandro Schwartz was asked this question by yours truly 6 months ago. And I said, what is the biggest difference? And he said, there isn't a difference until about 8 weeks until the end of the year. And if you're really bad, it's about 4 months before the end of the year. But he goes, the only difference is this. And this is where promotion relegation around the world, I think, makes it very intriguing. It's the promotion relegation in the Premier League because the money is so high. That money is not the same in France. Right. That money is not the same in Italy. It's really only the Premier League. However, the Champions League spots, that's where the real competition comes in. So the American owner that is now investing into these European clubs, when I meet with these American owners, they're talking about the Champions League places. Yeah. They're not talking to me about promotion relegation. They're talking about, well, if you finish here, you finish here. Like, that's the motivating stuff. That's where it comes in. And I think eventually Major League Soccer, Liga MX, CONCACAF is going to get to a place. It's not going to be the same monetary value. I don't want anyone to misconstrue what I'm saying, but you're now divvying up places and finishes and where you're going to go. Eventually, you're going to get there. I understand the question, Stephen. I think it's a very fair question, but I also don't love how that's the one reason why people say, well, that's why I don't watch it. Hang on a minute here.
Well, right? I wouldn't go that far either. But,
you know what I'm saying? Because Man City owns New York City.
Right.
Red Bull owns the New York Red Bulls. And they're as intrigued with the operation as they are with the other ones. It's just a different kettle of fish, but it's not like their energy's not the same. That's where I struggle when fans are like, well, I can't watch it then. Well, you're telling me right now you're going to watch 16 versus 17, 7, 8 straight weeks in the Premier League? Guys, you know as well as anyone, they're not going to. Right. And Ken and I have actually talked about this, Stephen. The ratings for those relegation games, it's not like they're blown through the roof.
Right.
The ratings that are higher, Liverpool versus Man City, the super clubs.
Right.
Those are where the ratings are through the rose.
Right. 100%. Yeah. I don't know how many times you and I have gone back and forth on Twitter. Those I wish we can I can reveal some of those private conversations with medical DMs, but I will not. I will not, because they stay where they are. Speaking with Taylor Twellman from Apple TV Plus, we're talking him to one thing that Stephen and I have been very critical, of course, was, and if you have as well, is of course is U.S. soccer and the way that they've been handling the U.S. men's soccer team. We finally think they have a manager that seems to be getting it, but up until this point, why hasn't U.S. soccer really gotten to be? I mean, we talk about the greatest generations, Taylor. We've talked about all this stuff. It's never seemed to come to fruition. Why hasn't it? I don't know. That's a loaded question.
It's a loaded question, but it's a great question, because this is what we're supposed to do. This is what we talk about. This is why we sit around bars and argue about how to fix it and everything. This is what makes sports great. Here's my issue with this, Ken, and it's, I'm going to try to simplify it, not because of you, but for me to try to get my thought across. It's more so of this, is that, and I'm a culprit in this. We've called this group of players the golden generation of players. They haven't really had a signature win yet. So that's one thing that I'm like, maybe we jumped the gun. Now, we've never had a group of players like this playing at the professional clubs in Europe as Americans. We've never had the AC Milans, Juventus, Chelsea's, Dortmunds. We've never had those clubs talking about Americans that are contributing at a regular high level. So that in and of itself is why we've looked at this group of players and said so. Here's the issue, though, that very few people, they discount. So great. Pulisic, McKennie, Adams, Weah, all of these guys are playing at high clubs, playing at a high level in Europe. That doesn't mean the rest of the world stopped growing.
Right.
That doesn't mean the rest of the world digressed. No.
I think they're getting even more better and better in some cases.
Stephen, that's the thing. We're trying to be a player in the world market. And in order to do so, we got to have 40 to 50 guys doing that. Now, do I think we'll get there? I do, Ken. I really do. Because when I talk to European scouts, they are foaming at the mouth at the quality of talent. The fact that Kevin Sullivan from the Philadelphia Union is deemed the best 14, 15-year-old soccer player in the world by Manchester City tells you they're here. It just takes time. But when people ask me that question and say, why haven't we? I just politely say, guys, we're progressing, but the rest of the world's not regressing. They're not going backwards. They're still going here. So we go up, but so are they. So it's, you know what I mean? You got to kind of like, we've just got to exponentially grow faster than everyone else, and that's going to be a grind. But if you would have told me when I did that famous "What are we doing?" rant and lost my mind, that this quickly we would have players playing at a high level, I'm not sure I would have believed it that day.
Right.
So ahead, a couple of follow-up questions to what the Ken was asking. One of the biggest issues that I keep hearing about when it comes to growth of the soccer in this country is usually pay for play is exponentially expensive for a lot of families, traveling teams, etc. What is your thoughts on that? And then number two, I think another gripe that I always hear from other fans that I've talked to is that the U.S. soccer always tends to play games in certain cities. They don't grow the, they don't host it in other cities like, outside of it. Say, like, for example, California, Florida. It's always usually like in central Ohio or St. Louis, your hometown, et cetera, et cetera. I remember there was even one qualifier played in a frigid temperature of Minnesota, like sub-freezing temperature. Do you think that U.S. soccer as a whole, is doing enough to growing the game, or are they just worried about maybe Latino fans outnumbering the U.S. soccer fans, and maybe the U.S. is kind of skirting that effort or something like that?
I mean, listen, Stephen, I think first off, there's multiple factors that go into a decision of where to play the game, when to play the game, and whatnot. A big one of that is you don't want your European-based players traveling further just so you could play a game in a different city. Now, I think friendlies should be played in different cities, but now the friendlies are, Nations League games. There's no friendlies. They don't play anyone outside of CONCACAF, really, which is, I think, the biggest issue for U.S. soccer and growing the men's team and the women's games is because of the Nations League formats and the friendlies that Bruce Arena, Bob Bradley, Jurgen Klinsmann used to get just aren't readily accessible to do so.
Right.
Mhm.
U.S. soccer has, listen, you're a non-for-profit. Your goal is to grow the game. And I think there is a little bit of a faction of us that believe they could do a little bit more with that. And Stephen, I think it's a fair question to ask of U.S. soccer and what they're trying to do to grow the game. Pay to play is a massive issue, but it's not just a soccer issue anymore. And you're talking to someone that played more baseball than soccer growing up.
Right.
Baseball's now expensive.
Traveling baseball and then football.
Traveling
as well.
baseball is now expensive. Baseball was never expensive to play. Soccer, when I grew up, was not expensive to play.
Mhm.
Now it is, but every sport is. Youth sports is a business. Now, the argument, which my good buddy and former colleague Alexi Lawless brings this up all the time, someone has to pay for it. He's 100% correct on that. They pay for it in Europe, quite honestly. They're not paying the same fees. And so ideally what happens is you've got to grow the game. Now that, in my opinion, that starts with U.S. soccer. I think Major League Soccer in its own communities have done so. But Stephen, that goes to the other point. There's 50 states. There's not 50 MLS teams. So U.S. soccer, how do you bridge those gaps? How do you bridge those where there's not academies and where some academies are still pay to play? There's just a lot to this. I just hope that we don't put the cart before the horse. And what I mean by that is I think society has an issue right now where families and kids are spending 2 hours of their time for practice and games. And we're missing the boat here about raising young adults, raising boys and girls to be men and women, whatever the sport it is. We're missing family time because they're on their tablets and on their phones because they got to travel so far to get a quality game or however they want to phrase it.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen, I don't think it's a U.S. soccer issue. I think it's a society issue. I really do. And so soccer gets lumped into this, and it's the headliner, mainly because girls and boys play it. It's participated at the highest rates under the age of 14. And so rightfully so, soccer could be at the forefront of changing that. I don't know if asking for 5, 10, 15 grand a year from families for what? What's the, you know what I mean? When we could be, I think, growing the game at a more grassroots level where maybe everyone's driving less than an hour and maybe we cut those costs in half.
Exactly.
I don't know, Stephen. I just wish honestly, it'd be the one thing, if I had the magic bullet, I would probably put all my attention and energy into that because I think that's how we grow this thing a lot quicker and faster than we are right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're speaking with Taylor Twellman of Apple TV Plus, MLS analyst, and you can see very passionate about whatever he's talking about. So we really appreciate this and spending a few minutes of your busy schedule out in LA ahead of the MLS Cup. If you had to look in your crystal ball and you know that Apple is going to be with MLS at least for the next few seasons, where would you say at the end of this? I mean, right now, I know that you're thinking that Apple's doing a great job, but what do you think in the next few years, where you see this? Will we see App 4K in games in 4K? Will we see perhaps even the presentation get even grander? What are you thinking? What do you think in the future?
It's a great question. Honestly, it's a great question. I think the one thing I've learned in my 2 years now, listen, I've been an Apple customer, as all of us have, with iPhones and MacBooks, and it started with an iPod for me and all of that. The one thing that I've learned behind the scenes, so to speak, and getting to know so many great people at Apple is they listen to the consumer. Like Ken, they listen, and Stephen, they listen to what the pros and cons of their experience. They want it to be about the consumer. They want it to be about the experience of the customer with their product. Now we're part of that ecosystem. Now we're part of Maps, music, whatever it may be, where now we're part of the Apple ecosystem and the 2+ billion devices that they have. That in and of itself is growth of Major League Soccer. I would love Apple TV and Major League Soccer to own the weekend. And what I mean by that is I would love to see Friday, Saturday, Sunday and just own it. 4K, Ken, I'm barely figuring out how to work my Beats Pro, but I'll tell you right now, course. I mean, if it means it makes the product better, Apple's going to look at that and say, yeah, absolutely. That's what we got to do. I just want them to be real interested in saying, we took Major League Soccer in 2023, and in 10 years, 2033, look at where we are. The iPhone 1 was a lot different when it was an iPhone 10 years later. That's kind of how my hope and why I jumped on this ship and this rocket ship to the moon, as Eddie Q likes to say. That's why I jumped on board, because when Apple gets involved and gets into something, it's very rare they don't have their gas on the pedal and ready to go for it. And so I think that's where year 3, year 4, year 5 after the World Cup, I think that's where these get. That's a great question, Ken, and I think it gets interesting.
How's your Apple discount? I know I left Apple like a year into your tenure, so my Apple discount is gone. But how is your Apple discount?
Ken, I'm still waiting for my discount. But it's one of those. I mean, Ken, let's be honest. If I ask for something, I just haven't asked for anything. I think I should ask for something at some point.
Well, you got Eddie Q's ear. You got to talk to Eddie Q.
I mean, I should ask for something. The only thing I care about with Eddie Q is he's asking for 7 or 8 strokes. And Eddie, when I send you this clip, I'm not giving you 7 or 8 strokes on the golf course. I'm not.
Oh, well, the thing is that you've got to be part of those Apple presentations with Tim Cook. So that's the next thing. I think that's the next thing with that MLS has to do is to be on part of the keynotes. That's the next thing. I think
the IQ level may go down a little bit, Ken, but that's fine.
Steven, go ahead.
So a couple of questions. Do you think the MLS will always still stick with the current schedule, or do we see at some point, maybe after 2026, when the World Cup is over,
well, I think they're going to
transition into that schedule?
That's going to happen, I think. Yeah.
Stephen, the owners are already talking about it. The rumors out. They're going to, make sure they cross their T's, dot their I's, do the whole 9 yards to figure out the winter climates in certain cities. But now with expansion, you have so many cities that can do this. Listen, they need to do it. We need to do it because we are now a player in the world market.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And when you line up the transfer windows with the top 5 to 7 leagues in the world that are buying your players, it's just going to work. The other part to this, and I've said this for a long time, your final now comes at a time when there's really not a lot going on. You avoid college football. You avoid the NFL. Yeah. You then just are in the midst of the NHL and NBA playoffs, but you can kind of own those games and then use the backing of the Champions League and whatnot. Listen, Major League Soccer's owners and the league office, they're not stupid. They're smart. They're looking at it. And Stephen, I would be shocked if they don't really look at this and try to do it at the end of the World Cup.
And you have one more question that we're going to tee up Taylor with, I believe, right, Stephen?
Yeah. So Ken can also have one last question before we go. Sorry for the time there. With Pochettino taking over the USMNT, things kind of look finally in that right direction after the debacle in Copa America last summer. What do you still need to see from this team that, given the the time constraint and also the lack of quality friendlies, what do you need to see from the rest of the team to say, okay, now I have a real good shot at making the quarterfinals at least?
I mean, the two positions that have me worried the most in the moment is center back pairing. Yeah. I don't think they know that. And who is your 9? I don't think they know that as well. I know people are worried about the goalkeeper. I'm not. I think the goalkeeper will be figured out, and there's plenty of time to get there and figure that out, whether you're Matt Turner or whoever it may be. Listen, they've got to win some significant games. This group hasn't won significant games.
Yes.
And I know they got other group in the World Cup in 2022, but they don't have that significant win. And so you're now in your backyard. It's the largest World Cup ever. So who knows how it looks like, who you're playing games. So yeah, naturally, I think, quarterfinal in the biggest World Cup ever because there's more teams. The competition isn't as great. Absolutely. That should be the goal. he's got to figure it out pretty quickly. You're talking to me in December of 2024, and then the blink of an eye, we're going to be talking about the World Cup.
Yeah.
But those are the two positions, Stephen, to answer your question very in depth. I'm worried about who the 9 is, starting as the 9. Is there a real threat to score goals at the international level? And who's the center back pairing going to be? Because if it's Tim Ream in the World Cup in 18 months from now, I think we're looking at a 40-year-old player potentially as being your center back. I'm not sure you want that.
No.
Right. One last question before we end. And again, thank you very much for your time, Taylor, and we really appreciate it. Thank you very much for doing this. For the final, I know I'll ask it anyway. Who are you picking?
It's a good one, Ken. You know me, I'm smart enough not to take that bait since I'm calling the game.
I know. I had to ask.
I will tell you this. I will tell you, well, no, of course, that's why you are who you are. The New York Red Bulls have had 3 playoff games on the road, 3 clean sheets. It's remarkable. Honestly, it feels like everything's going their way. The fact that Ricky Pooch tears his ACL, I just look at it, and I think the Red Bulls have everything going their way, but I just think the cream always rises to the top. And I think the LA Galaxy will be a real handful for the Red Bulls to defend. Gabriel Peck is a player that you guys will hear over the next 3, 4, 5 weeks of probably getting a $20 to $26 million transfer fee from someone in Europe. He's that good. Joseph Paintsil is the fastest player in Major League Soccer. He had 10-plus goals, 10-plus assists. And Jovic has 20-plus goals in all competitions. I just think LA with the home field advantage, Ken, it will be a massive upset if the Red Bulls win this game.
Okay, so you're saying 3-0 for LA Galaxy? No, I'm just kidding. I am not going to do that to you. Taylor Twellman, the analyst, he's going to be calling the game on Apple TV Plus with Jake Zivin. They've done a great job calling games this season. It's been a fun time. There have been some great viral moments in MLS, and we expect a few more in MLS Cup. It'll also be on Fox. Your coverage on Apple TV starts at 2:30 pregame show with the MLS warm-up. It's also in Spanish as well. Taylor Twellman, thank you very much, and we hope to have you on again before the MLS season next year.
Awesome. Great fun, boys. Good to see you, Ken. Steven, nice meeting you, bud.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
it's been
much.
A pleasure.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for thanks very much for joining us for the AA team, and we'll see you soon, and thank you very much for joining us. And Taylor